then I'll like transcribe it and put it on YouTube. So now we're live. Usually I wait like a little bit just to give folks an opportunity, because only once I do the go live do folks get like an actual notification about this even happening. But yeah, so let me just check. Mark was supposed to provide an update regarding any changes. Okay, so no changes there. All right, so this is Nikita. Nikita is our source of all things design. He kicked ass on the Nativewind UI website and the Create Expo Stack website. And now he is lending a hand to redoing the Nativewind documentation visually. I am changing it content-wise. But yeah, so Mark is out sick this week, and in his stead, we have Nikita, aka Pickle Nick. Yeah, so let me close out Whisper Flow real quick because it's wilding right now. It's like unsure of what it's doing. Oh, it closed by itself. Great. So yeah, Nikita, we will show what we have cooking on the new documentation look and feel, but I wanted to give you a chance to sort of speak to what technology is behind it and what visually you're going for with it.
Mostly Tailwind. Visually, I think we tried to recreate like the vibe of the Tailwind docs without like copying directly their grid lines, but it's also like a bunch of grid lines. And I used a bunch of like dashed borders to give it the same kind of vibe. Some vibe coding for the background animation. I could not do the flow field myself. I do not remember that math. It's
Is
probably
it
somewhere in pre-calculus.
so we'll show it in a second. It's wild. Like I was messing around with it, just like looking at it. Is it based off of the mouse movement at all, or is it completely
Uh,
like doing its own thing?
I have multiple versions. Some of them are, but the whole point is like you have a field flow or vector field is what it's called. So it's a bunch of like
Okay.
directions at different points, and you can change it. The
I would
original was just
love
like an arctangent function and just wheel.
I this is like a beautiful effect. Like I was waiting. I've been like pulling like all of the changes every single day, just waiting until that effect was added in. And I had a lot of fun just messing around with it. I think it's going to be, I think our bounce rate alone will go down pretty substantially in just like the first week as
Especially
people
if it's
start
mouse
messing.
interactive. Just
Exactly.
keep dragging it around.
That's what I mean, because it's such a fun little minor effect. But yeah, so we figured basically this is a styling library and it should look awesome. Obviously, the content needs to also be awesome, but it would be really weird if like the leading styling library in React Native did not also like look and feel amazing. And then obviously we've also changed the logo, which will be announced on social media probably later this week or maybe early next week. But we'll preview that today, so people watching can at least get a chance to see that before it like sort of is spread out across everything. So let's start with the website. Do you want to pull up a screen share of what the new docs sort of look like?
Yep. Pulling that up.
Oh, and I
All
have
right.
to add it to the stage.
Are we seeing
Okay.
it?
Yeah. So I'm just
That's
going to
the
make this a
hero.
little bit bigger for me.
That's the animation. Should I make it light mode? Flashbang warning. No. No.
I actually like
Um,
it in dark mode. I think it looks really
yeah.
nice.
Oh,
So,
to get back to the technologies part, we're using Fuma docs template for the docs themselves, and they've been helpful. Like there's been a bunch of like minor things that are not supported out of the box that I was like, I'll do that. Just pinging Fuma developer on GitHub, and he's been helpful. Like the response rate, the response time has been
Oh,
like
you've been
less than a
talking to
day.
someone at Fumadocs?
Yeah, I've been just bothering them in discussions all
Oh,
the time.
okay. That's why you
Um,
told me to do it. I was like, dude, no one responds to those. Or I don't respond to them. But okay. Good to know
no,
there's a
they do.
reason to do that. So this header is this above the fold area is something you and I are still working on and probably will see the most significant change before
Yeah,
this
it's
goes
kind of
live.
empty.
Yeah, this part
Um,
is still kind of empty, but like conceptually is there. We still have the search in there. I love the navigation header effect, right? So
this
yeah,
thing.
that little bit of uh the box around it expanding downward,
Mhm.
that part is really good, and we'll throw some graphics into there um now that we have someone to generate those. But as you start to then scroll down is where you start to see, yeah, like we really want it to feel familiar to the Tailwind landing page, but not obviously mirroring it exactly. So,
I was
the,
even thinking my
yeah,
problem is I don't know much of Nativewind itself. I should probably like read
I,
the docs.
yeah,
But I was
again,
thinking like put little Nativewind like names for Nativewind for this grid, for example.
what do you mean?
Like in each box, this is me with Tailwind, right? If we inspect, can you see the inspect
Yeah.
panel? Um, this is like row span 1, call span 2, and like whatever is the Nativewind equivalent of that, just put it here. Kind of similar to how native Tailwind has it above the titles. There's like a dim
Hmm.
uh, text styles.
That would
Um,
be really
Tailwind
cool. I
boxes.
think that would be a really nice effect to visually convey, here's how you do this, right? And because it's like a form end function thing, you want to see how it's done as well as what the realized effect is. That's going to be a new thing also with all the different guides and things like that in the actual documentation. Uh, you're going to have like a link to a place where you can actually play around with that, right? So if it's like dark light mode, there'll be a link to being able to see uh, either in a browser or on a device, like actually like the switch toggle between dark and light mode. So you
Mhm.
can actually like feel it, not just like read how to do it. So, but yeah, so I totally agree what you're saying should be there. Um, the component kits are also, I just wanted to cover like those are also going to be listed. Um, Yeah. We're currently working on a registry also, similar to Shad CN's registry, which will allow you to easily, view, install Native Wind UI or React Native reusables, and we'll sort of include the other component libraries as time goes on, all of which sort of rely on native winds. So it's going to just get a lot easier to consume those libraries, whether they are completely free or have like a paid component to them or whatever. Yeah. So that's fully featured right up front on the landing page now too. So now you switched then to the actual docs, I think, right? Like, what does that look like? So, one of the
The
biggest pages we
video
get a
lead.
lot of traffic to is the installation page. So, I wanted to take a look at that. We were dealing with a really annoying. This is like, I think, the inception for wanting to use Fumadocs in the first place was that little side nav bar. Yeah. Um, Docusaurus did not allow us to like have the tabs and then see.
Neither
Yeah.
does Fuma Docs. Like out of the box, this is not supported. It glitched for a second there, but I don't remember how I did it. I kind of hard coded these as a link. So like this is not a tabs component, it's a link. I was trying to use tabs component. I was just breaking my head like how do I make tabs work with this? But I think these like the SDK49, etc. These pages are hidden here, and this default is just to 50.
Mm,
But keeping it highlighted was the main problem because like this is no longer 50 the URL, but
Mhm.
it keeps this one highlighted to show you that
And
you're still in install.
for the sake of simplicity, like when SDK 53 reaches a more stable state, which is basically when they release a 0.1 version, we're going to remove the SDK 49 bit. So there will be less instructions. That being said, like I want to provide more clarity content wise around things like how to use Nativewind for desktop applications when you're making them with React Native, as well as like further monorepo support, because we get a lot of questions about that. But this installation page is most of our traffic aside from the landing page itself. So this is where a lot of the effort went in initially. Fortunately, in the work you've done, Nikita, the markdown has been preserved, right? And I think for the most part on mobile, it's also like it looks quite good.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's thanks to Fuma docs. I think their mobile defaults are very good.
we got to do something about that tab situation, though.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't.
that happened. I didn't I
Yeah,
didn't look into that before. Yeah, that's fixable.
yeah, but these are like the minor things that we're going to be touching up towards the end of this, and the idea here
I
is
like this progress bar at the top.
I actually haven't taken a look at it, but yeah, the little like completing circle is really nice. There's all these like little tiny things that I love about the new documentation that give communicate without any words like, okay, these people actually give a shit about design. I can see myself beginning to trust using this. And so long as the actual experience that follows is really good, I think this will be like a huge net win for the what do you call it? The when they release the surveys for React Native, there's like how do you
Oh,
feel about it?
state of
Sentiment.
this, state of that.
Yeah, the state of native or the state of React Native survey is released, and it shows you quantity of people who have used your thing, but it also shows you the sentiment analysis. And I think that sentiment is what I'm really going for. So that's the goal here. And all these like little nuanced visual, like the scrolling effect that you had when you're scrolling down the page and the index bit like animates down. Just tiny stuff like that, I think makes a big difference. And when I was talking about the hover effect, hopefully people can see it on the stream, but there are these sort of wind patterns on the header that are
I can push
reminiscent.
it up to follow the cursor in a second.
Yeah, that would be great because it is meant to mimic the effect of like when you're viewing like a, what do you call it? The weather patterns or whatever. And
Win map.
yeah, like a wind map. And so as you move your cursor around, ideally, it just sort of like, you know, moves the wind along with your cursor. And I really, really like that effect. You
There's
had that
kind of
idea
one
pretty early
version,
on, I
but
think.
yeah, there's kind of one version, but I want more of it to move and just swirl in the middle.
Yeah.
Haven't gotten to that yet. So far, it just swirls around the cursor.
Yeah. I'm really excited for the last bits of this to come together. The like I was saying before, the idea here is push out the changes visually, like do the visual overhaul, and then from there begin to iterate on the content changes over the coming days and weeks that follow. And I started, like I said, with the installation stuff. That's already in there. The only change that'll be made there um, is one, removing the SDK 49 as soon as SDK 53 stabilizes, and two, there's a little bit of confusion that people have with which version of Reanimated to choose. And I'm going to try to figure out a meaningful way to basically ensure, especially for Expo users, that we're always using the version of React Native Reanimated that matches Expo routers. Um, so got to think about the best way to do that. But those are the two only changes that will really be made to that page outside of more support for monorepos, which people, like I said, are confused about. The next page that gets a lot of questions, or the concept that gets a lot of questions, is light dark mode support, because of sort of how people are used to using it in Tailwind. And in Tailwind, you use what is that CSS thing called? Pre-colors, whatever. It's listed here.
Prefers color
That
scheme,
one.
I think.
Yeah, so they suggest using that, and there's just things that are specific to web. They even suggest if you want to do like data attributes or whatever, that you use like local storage, or if you want to use it as like a class set, like you use local storage to like toggle these values manually. And those things are handled differently in mobile. And so we just need to make sure to communicate those ideas clearly. So I want to go through it does cover that, but I just want to make sure that we're doing that in the most streamlined way possible. And not only do I want to make sure we're telling people, hey, here are the different ways you can do this, one, automatically, two, manually, three, maybe you want the like hard set change from light to dark mode, or maybe you want the animated change. I want people to have that flexibility, but I also want to give them an actual visual example to go along with what they're reading. So if they're deciding to see, if they want to see an example of how it changes based off of manually setting it or automatically setting it, that they actually have a visual example in their hands, ideally, of that actually happening. So that's the caliber of experience that I want to bring to each revisit of the content. Um, the one that I'll focus on right after that is basically custom fonts. That's the other one. Both of these are really tied to React Native predominantly. These are just like not so much Nativewind things as they are like weird nuances with React Native itself, but regardless, it causes some confusion. So that is the docs update for the week. Technically, for version 5, we are still working to deliver that. Given that Mark is sick, I'll have to follow up with him regarding how that affects the timeline of release. We do have sort of a branch for it, and we've been testing it out with some folks to cover some of the ground that we've missed while we watch them like use it. But I'd really like to get this thing out there before app.js, which is on May 28th. So yeah, if anything, I will force Mark to push it out before then. It's certainly been a hot minute. So then I think the only thing we have left is to reveal the new logo. And I think you have that pulled up. So why don't you? Yeah. So this is the new Nativewind logo. We're working on a fun little animation of the actual wind blowing in line by line. And that will then be posted on socials and will replace all of the things in the documentation, in the Discord, and all that stuff. But Mark, sort of when he was first starting on Nativewind, didn't give much thought to the logo. He really just took the Tailwind logo and smacked it in the center of the React Native logo. So he's very happy to see us revisiting this aspect of it. The one thing also that we're thinking about is the font and case of the Nativewind word mark. Apparently, Mark just randomly will either capitalize or not capitalize the N and the W in Nativewind, and there's no like consistent pattern there. So I've been messing around with that, and I'll post updates along with the logo change. but this will be how Nativewind is presented moving forward. And I'm personally a huge fan. Nikita had a lot to do with this. I feel like I didn't give him all that much to work off of, but it's turned out really, really nice. And with the animation, I think it'll be even better. So you definitely kicked ass on this one. Very, very happy with the result. Yeah. So that's the update on the state of Nativewind. We will probably, hopefully, assuming Mark doesn't die of dysentery by next week, have him back. There's going to be, by that time, all of the new documentation stuff will be published. We'll have hopefully the registry in place. Actually, you know what? Yeah, Tanner, very, very much on brand for Mark is just like the inconsistent. Sorry, I want to show this inconsistent capitalization is very much on brand for Mark. But yeah, so we'll have the new documentation up by the time Mark and I are streaming next week. We will have the new logo also in place. We'll hopefully have Mark back from the sickness. And then one thing I do actually want to mention before we cut it is there's going to be a new page for on the documentation that doesn't currently exist in the current docs, which is basically a community resources type of deal. There's been a lot of open source work both within Nativewind and externally, like third-party stuff. And I want to have a central place where people can see that, because folks have a hard time of finding just the component kits alone. I find a lot of times people are asking me regarding Nativewind UI stuff like, oh, what I wanted something like that looked more like ShadCN, and I'm like, well, have you tried React Native Reusables? And they're like, I've never heard of that. So we're going to have a place where all of that stuff is. In addition to just the component kits, you'll have stuff like RN primitives, which we're going to have a version 2, which will begin to support web components, which means that React Native Reusables will have web components, Nativewind UI will have web components. So all that stuff will be discoverable on this sort of community resources page that'll be part of the Nativewind documentation. And we're also adding a showcase, right? I sent Nikita a whole bunch of stuff. We had that post a while back where we asked folks to like submit their links of stuff they've built with Nativewind. And so we'll start with a couple of folks who have built stuff with Nativewind so you can see what that looks like. And we'll gradually be adding to that. So these are the major updates. I can't think of another resource. Maybe we'll link to Expo UI for those who are interested. But yeah, we really want to equip the folks who are trying to build for Nativewind more and more. And hopefully we see that change even just into like May 28th, like I said, into app.js. I'd love to see the folks who are trying to build for Nativewind have a much easier time, much more predictable time with things. The version 5 toggle will have its own sort of like new set of information. You can currently, I think, toggle between version 4, version 2 up there on the current website. So that'll be one last change that you see. Yeah, those are all the updates we have. Nikita, thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. Adios.